Good evening, Missouri Charter Public School families. This is our second advocacy mini training session of fall 2020. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Missouri Charter Public Schools, the power of our parent voice, and how to tell your charter school story. All of these events are part of our Fix the Glitch campaign, which I will be sharing here in a second. My name is Christy Moreno, and first and foremost, I am Nina and Emilio's mom. I am a charter school parent here in Kansas City. My children attend Crossroads Charter Schools, and I am also the bilingual director of advocacy for the Missouri Public Charter School Association. The mission of the association is to improve student achievement by increasing access to a high quality charter public education options here in the state of Missouri. Our association is recognized as the primary resource and advocacy organization for Missouri's charter public schools. We envision all of our charter public schools working together to maximize our collective strength to best serve students and families. And in order to make this happen, the MCPSA continuously develops and implements strategic services, trainings, resources, and partnerships that are intended to assist charter schools in providing the best possible public school opportunity to students and families. Today, we have 66 schools across St. Louis and Kansas City, and our efforts are helping to reshape public education, providing Missouri students and families with more high-quality public education options than ever before. We serve collectively 25,634 students that are enrolled both in Kansas City and St. Louis. That adds up to 45% of students in public schools in Kansas City and St. Louis are charter school students. That's a very big number. Now, why is it important for me to talk about these figures right now? Well, first, because I don't know if all of you are familiar with how impactful charter schools are being in our state, but also because we have something we need to talk about, and this is the issue that we have with funding equity in our state. Charter school funding equity is an effort we have been pursuing with the legislature for just over a year. We have identified that due to some local funding lines that charter schools don't currently receive, as well as some interest rates that are dated back to 2015, schools are receiving between $600 and $800 less per student per year than the local traditional school districts. We've been working with the legislature to pass a bill that would remedy that for our schools and for our students. Our Fix the Glitch funding equity campaign, which has started with these advocacy sessions and will officially start with all our push as far as digital, social media, and other connections, will aim at accurately explaining the importance of charter public schools in our community, to share with parents, teachers, and all stakeholders the importance of sharing their charter school story as a way to advocate for our students in our schools, to understand and be able to share why our students are not receiving their fair share of equitable public funding, to prepare us to contact our Missouri legislators to advocate for a solution, and to develop personal action plans so that we can advocate and share this with our community and our districts in all of our charter public school communities, and to invite others to advocate with us. It is important for us to understand that lawmakers decide if charter schools are allowed to operate in a given state, so in our state, Missouri, what regulations are applied to charter schools, if they can grow, how they are funded, if their funding is equitable with other public schools, and many other topics and issues. If we want to see school options thrive in our neighborhoods and our cities, we must voice our support for our charter schools to our lawmakers. We need to amplify our parent voice, our teacher voice, our stakeholder voice, and to exercise our power. So, tonight we're going to talk about parent voice and parent power. We're going to talk about the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now as principles of public narrative. And I do want to say that I am using parent, and that's why I have an asterisk there as a shorthand for family, caregiver, guardian, mentor, or any community member that is taking responsibility for the well-being and the education of a child or a student of public schools in Missouri. So parent voice and parent power. These are terms that are very much out there on trend, I would say, but they're not new. They've been out in existence and in use for a little over a decade, actually. And we know as parents that we know best what's best for our children because we have a unique insight into their needs, their dreams, their tendencies, their desires. And also, we have these instincts as parents that we know what our children need. We know what they need to thrive because we have all these experiences with them. In education, parent voice refers to the values, the perspectives, the opinions, the beliefs, but also the cultural backgrounds of parents or caregivers. Um, and of families, of course, of students that are enrolled in schools. Now, parent voice also extends to parent groups, to cultural organizations, and to other entities that are related to a school or to an educational system through connections. Parent power exists and is built upon when parents have access to information, to resources, to platforms, to activities, to initiatives about the education options that best fit their children's needs. And these are always, regardless of where they live, regardless of their family's income or their life circumstances. Now, as stakeholders of charter public schools, it is important for us to know that there is much more engagement and parent involvement within the charter public school system, because that is really where charter schools are built from. There are a lot of charter schools around the nation that were actually built by parents. So parents have always been considered fundamental stakeholders in the education of children in charter public schools. So we are stakeholders. That means that we are invested in the welfare and success of our children and our schools. It means that we have the power to engage and elevate each other in the discussion about how we can best create high quality schools that meet the needs of our kids and our communities and our neighborhoods. Studies of successful schools report that parent involvement, parent engagement, and parent empowerment are major factors in their outcomes, including in closing the achievement gap between various groups of students or schools. And we know, because we're parents, that we quickly become experts at finding resources and at navigating systems. Such exposure can lead to our involvement. And as parents, we have voice to share, and we have an important story to tell. Our experiences are valuable and they can be used to change and improve the lives for better. Because we are parents of charter schools, we value options, we value choice, and we made the choice to have our children be charter school students. Schools are accountable to us because we made the choice to participate in their community. Parents can gain the knowledge and skills to function in meaningful leadership roles with their schools, to represent a collective parent voice that will help shape the direction in which our schools work, that will help in start initiatives that will benefit all students or a group of students, that will help and impact educational programs communities, communications, etc. As my friend Ben Austin from the Parent Revolution and the Kids Coalition in California says, and I will say that he's a surfer, there's a big wave. It's a big wave that we have to catch and ride it, and it is the wave of parent power. It is on the rise, and there are many organizations throughout the nation sprouting and growing and empowering caregivers and parents. And these are organizations that are training us how to be advocates, how to be leaders, and community organizers. For example, the Parent Leadership Training Institute, PLTI, in Kansas City, that believes that families, communities, and our democracy are strengthened when all parents have the leadership skills to maximize child outcomes at home, in the neighborhood, their schools, and also in public policy. PLTI, as well as other organizations like the Parent Power Lab as well, which is the picture that you have here on the screen. That is the leader of Parent Power Lab, Spark. That's his name. He's an excellent community organizer. They equip parents with the skills and access to not only be at the policy table for children, but to be an effective participant. This is very important as our educational system is desperately needing to be reformed and to be adjusted and to serve all students. There's another organization here actually in Missouri, but this one's also in Kansas City, and that's the Show Me Casey Schools. And they actually have a Parents' Bill of Rights. This one is very important as they, as parents are realizing that we have the power to contribute to the education of our children. It really is a mighty thing. And for some of us exercising that power, it helps us realize that this is the start of, what we can do. It also is helping us identify if there are larger structural changes in our schools or our school systems, and we can be part of helping address these. We can raise our parent voice. We can, collectively work together to inquire about them, to partner with our school's leadership, to find root causes and possible solutions. There are some of these points on the Parents' Bill of Rights that I particularly love, like number 3 that says, parents have a right to be actively engaged in ways that are meaningful to my family and to be viewed as an asset and a partner in my child's learning process. This includes visiting my child's classroom when appropriate. Another one, number 5, to be seen as my child's first educator. That is power right there. And to raise my child with the culture, traditions, and values that are important to my family, and for those to be honored, welcomed, and supported. Transparency, number 6, about how my child's school is funded and governed. And this one is particularly important to us as we look at the issue of the funding inequity that exists in our state for public school students. This is a quote from Matt Hammer, who's a founder and CEO of Innovate Public Schools, and he says, "We have this uncompromising belief in the infinite capacity of every child to learn, to grow, to create, to be brilliant, and to lead." We all believe that. But he also says we must have the same belief in their parents. This is parent power. And also Maya Martin, who is also the executive director for Parents Amplifying Voices in Education out of Washington, D.C., she says, "It never surprises me that parents are always on the pulse of what is important for our kids in our schools. They get it, they care, and they will show up to do the hard work. But we have to open the system to their voices. We know parents care about the education of their children. I've been working with parents for a long time, and I have yet to meet a parent that says, no, I don't really care about my child's education. We just have to make sure that our schools, our organizations, our systems are set up to open the doors for our parents to share, to come help us, to partner with us. Here I have an example of a parent who is currently very involved in the development of a new charter school that's going to open its doors in the fall of 2021 in St. Louis, Missouri. And this is a great example of when parents are valued as primary stakeholders in the education of their kids, they're innovative, positive outcomes that are possible.
For parent involvement with the leadership school, it's welcomed. And that's something that I'm looking for. I want to be a part of the decision-making process when it comes to my children. I understand they'll be the experts in, educating them in that regard, but I do want to be a part of every step of the way of learning about what works for them, what doesn't work for them. So then we can also kind of implement the tactics at home, because I think that they're doing their part. We also need to be doing our part at home. So being a part of the educational process is something that parents need to be involved with, so we can also support what they're doing. For parent involvement with
Now, there's something that's important to mention and to define. There's parent involvement, there is parent engagement, and there's parent empowerment. And while parents can be empowered, meaning they're engaged and involved, sometimes parents are involved, however, they're not engaged or empowered. And this has to work in conjunction with our school leaders, our school systems, and the organizations that we're working with. So what is parent involvement? That is when parents are participating, attending events and activities. Teachers are providing the learning resources and information about their kids' school grades. There's parent engagement. That is when parents and teachers are sharing a responsibility to help their children learn and meet the educational goals. But then there's parent empowerment. That is when parents are offering their perspective, their unique insights, their values, their knowledge, where they can partner with their school leaders to problem solve for individual or collective needs. And we know, and there are a ton of studies that prove that when parents are empowered and when parents have a seat at the table and when parents are welcome to share their perspectives and their expertise in their children and their knowledge, things and the outcomes will be better, more fruitful, more effective when they're partnering with their leaders, with their educators. Parent empowerment involves both informing and organizing parents so that they can participate fully in a school community. It means embracing the belief that all voices and all perspectives are welcome and intentionally providing space, really, for those voices to be heard. In many cases, it also involves removing barriers. There can be a lot of barriers that are not allowing for this exchange to happen freely. For example, language can be one of them. Culture can be another of them. Maybe even schedules can be also barriers. Some that are faced by marginalized communities as well. And while parent engagement gets parents in schools and informs about student assignments, parent empowerment involves them by creating the opportunities to collaborate and partner with educators and administrators on the child's academic goals or the school's goals. To be clear, parent engagement and involvement are important, but without empowering parents and giving them the space to offer all that they have to share, then without giving that space, we cannot really expect for a lot of growth, for a lot of that equity to happen. Problem solving will definitely be more effective when we have parents as partners, or when as parents we partner with our teachers and our schools in designing and implementing solutions. An empowered parent is an asset to their child's learning, whether it's a school or at home, as well as to the school community. And I paused at home because many of us are partnering with our schools, educating our children remotely, virtually, having them at home through this just awful pandemic. So that it was very important for us to talk about parent voice, parent power, parent involvement, engagement, and empowerment, because these are the pillars of a thriving school community where all stakeholders work in collaboration to provide solutions to advance the initiatives and the goals of our schools, of our educational systems, but more than anything, of our students' lives. Now, I was sharing about the funding equity initiative campaign and it really is an issue that all charter schools in Missouri are working together to fix. A year ago, we started this initiative with campaigns. I was actually one of the parents that was activated through these initiatives. I was able to support with other parents our schools, attended some of these training sessions as well, was able to write an op-ed that was collectively with another parent in St. Louis that was published, and ultimately delivered testimony at the legislature twice last year to fix this equity issue, funding equity issue. Unfortunately, well, actually, let me back up. Fortunately, we were very successful throughout the process. We were able to host a rally with about 200 participants, including students, school leaders, teachers, parents, grandparents, community allies, and had a wonderful event in Jefferson City at the Capitol. It was a great event where we had a lot of parents and stakeholders meeting with legislators that day. We also had sort of a celebration where we had some of our schools, our students performing. We had speeches by some legislators, parents and teachers, and we also were able, myself included, to provide testimony. The bill what passed the education committee and the budget committee. And then when it hit the Senate, COVID happened. The pandemic started and everything was halted. The progress and the process was halted. So we're having to start all over again this year. We know that this is something that we need to fix. This is a loophole in the legislation, unintended, but it definitely needs to be fixed because it's stuck in figures that are very, very outdated. Now, I will host a session next week where we will be talking about how to fix this glitch, delivering information a little bit more specific to the issue. But we are here in preparation for the legislative session to talk to all of you, to inform our stakeholders and our parents of what we're fighting for, and that is for the fair share that our students receive for their public funding of their education. So we're going to move on to talking about how to tell our charter school story. And today I'm going to present some principles that have been very impactful in the advocacy realm, specifically education. And these are by very well known, and I hope that you Google him and look him up after this session, lecturer Marshall Guns, and he is a public narrative expert. And we're going to talk about the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. Marshall Gans is a senior lecturer in public policy at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. He has worked on staff of the United Farm Workers for many years. He has been a trainer and organizer for political campaigns and nonprofit groups. He is credited with devising the successful grassroots organizing model and training for Barack Obama's winning the 2008 presidential campaign. But more than anything, he's a wonderful storyteller and a trainer of just great storytelling. So stories are how we learn to make choices. And we all, at least charter public school parents and stakeholders, we exercised our choice, right? Stories are how we learn to access the moral and emotional resources we need to face the uncertain, the unknown, the unexpected, and doing it mindfully. When we share our personal stories of the challenges that we have faced or the choices that we have made, sometimes for our children, and what we have learned from making those choices, meaning those outcomes, we become more mindful of our own moral resources and our own values. And at the same time, when we share our stories, we're sharing our wisdom so as to inspire others. Stories enable us to communicate our values not as abstract principles, but as lived experience, and they have the power to move others. One of Marshall Ganz's statements always is that if you don't author your own public story, someone else will. And they may not tell it in the way that you like. And when we're talking about advocating and parent voice and stakeholder voice in education, we're talking about making our stories public. We're talking about joining, whether it's our school or a collective initiative, but we are talking about sharing our stories, our learnings publicly. So this is important to note as we move on to talking about the story of self. When we talk about the story of self, we must ask ourselves, where are the sources of our own calling? Why are we sharing our story? You see, our stories allow others to have insight, both intellectual and emotional, to our perspectives, our experiences, and our values. They share why we have chosen to act and to make the choices and to act in such ways, and sharing the outcomes as well. And they also talk about what can be expected from us and what can be learned from us sharing our stories. When we develop our story of self, which is our personal lived in experience, we must ask ourselves, why am I being called to motivate others to join me in this action? What stories can I share? What can I say that will enable others to get what I'm thinking, to get why I made a choice, to understand why I'm sharing this with them? How can I enable others to experience the values that moved me, not only to act and exercise a choice, but to share my story publicly to lead? What critical choice points can you recall? So, for example, for us parents or teachers, educators, or charter school um, founders, what motivated us to make the choice of joining the charter public school community? What were those critical points? What was the internal dialogue? Was there a conflict? Was there a motivation? And what examples can we share about our journey that can really be compelling to share our story and our motivation? Then we have the story of us. We are all part of a collective or collectives or communities, whether it is in our families, through our faith, in our cultures, in our communities, organizations that we belong to. We participate and we engage with others. We share common beliefs, we share common goals. And one way to establish the story of us is thinking about that shared identity through telling not just our story of self, but our collective stories, our shared stories. stories through which we can talk about the shared values, sometimes the shared barriers, the hurdles, but also the outcomes. So who is the us you will call upon to join? When we're talking about a funding inequity issue in our schools and in our for our children, we are part of a collective. And it is important for us to realize that we have to start with ourselves, with our community, because I will share that we have found that there are many, even of our own stakeholders, that don't fully understand what a charter school is, right? That's what I had that sort of like Missouri Charter Public School 101 session last week, where I shared the basics of what a charter school is, how it is funded, who sponsors it, et cetera. We have to start with our community and then work outward. So who are we going to be sharing the story of us with? In our case, that is going to be our community, our legislators or representatives, our neighbors, our friends. And so that is what we're working towards. When we share the story of us, we bring the story of self and share it collectively with a group, right? And that brings us to the story of now. What urgent challenge might you call on us to face? For us, it is the funding inequity. The story of now is urgent. And I will tell you that the public funding of education, the funding of public education is critical right now. And this is a very pressing and urgent matter. Not just because it has always been, there's always been this glitch, and since, for a while now, but also because through the pandemic and with the budget being cut, the education budgets suffering, and also COVID hitting our schools' finances as well. Right now, it is very pressing that we work to fix this funding inequity issue. So it is an urgent need. There is a threat. It is meant, when we share the story of now, of our present, it is meant to inspire others to pay attention. It is a call to action. And it is rooted in the values that we share, again, in the story of self and in the story of us, but it brings a challenge. It brings a call to action, and it pretty much has a deadline, right? It is pressing and it is urgent, and we must act. When we are talking about the story of now, we need to share within that story, what is the urgent challenge? What are the actions that we're hoping others will join us in? What is our vision of the successful action? What choices will we call on members of our community? How can we all act together to achieve this outcome? And how can we begin right now at this very moment? And tonight, I am hoping that after this session, that you can start thinking about your story of self, your story of us, and your story of now in the context of our charter public schools, in the context of your child or your children's public education. Because stories speak the language of emotion, language of the heart. They teach us not only how we ought to act, but they can inspire us with the courage to act. And because the sources of emotion on which they draw are in our values, in our personal experience, then our stories can help us translate our values into action. You may think sometimes that your story doesn't matter, that you don't have that interesting of a story to share, that maybe you shouldn't be talking about yourself. But when we are working to do public good, when we're working to advocate for something, we have a responsibility to offer a public account of who we are, why we are here, why we're interested, why we want, in our case, to fix the glitch, and why we do what we do, and where we're hoping to get with this. And on the right of your screen, what you're seeing is an inspiring story, and I want to share with you about Jayla and Jillian. This is Parent Power in Action. This is my friend Jillian Rainingbird Minmi. She is a Kansas City charter public school parent. She's the president of the Parent Action Committee at Crossroads Preparatory Academy, a mother of three. She's an amazing leader, a super empowered, engaged, and involved parent. And she's the mother of Jayla, a sweet girl, lover of unicorns and rainbows, who fought both spinal muscle atrophy and diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. Jayla passed of a brain tumor last year, and she was probably the only person in the universe who fought these two very rare diseases altogether. Jillian has participated in the Parent Leadership Institute's training, and I asked if I could share this with you today. She said yes. Jillian advocated a few years ago for legislation that required and requires now that all babies must be tested for spinal muscular atrophy. Missouri was the first state to pass this legislation, thanks to Jillian. Her biggest hope is to educate parents of disabled children in our state and probably expand that nationally. And she really wants to create a KC Metro Special Education Parent-Teacher Association. Jillian testified last year at the Capitol in Jefferson City for our Fix the Glitch campaign. She did an outstanding job at sharing her story, sharing her story, the story of us, and not only of us as charter school parents, but of parents that have children with disabilities and special learning needs. And she also shared the story of now, why she was there to share not just her story, but the story of all charter public school parents and students. She is definitely a very empowered parent, now a leader, and an excellent example of what it is to bring and raise our parent voice, join it with the collective, empower other parents, grow that parent voice and the power, and make change at the level of the legislature. This is just an example of the power of parents, the power of teachers, the power of all of those who believe that our students deserve high quality public education. I also want to share, last year, we had many parents show up and show support, but we had this really terrific group of teachers and parents that also, as well as I did, presented testimony more than once. And this is, again, an example of the power of parent voice in action. We heard throughout the legislative session last year, our lawmakers saying, all right, we see the issue, we understand, we've read the bill, we've done our research, but we need to hear from those who are affected directly by this inequity, by this glitch in the legislation. And that is parents and students. So it is very important for us to come together, to share our stories, in the coming weeks as we work on developing our stories, on developing our parent power, and on providing tools and training on how to reach your lawmakers. It is very important that we take this seriously because it's our children's education that is at stake. And with this, I want to conclude tonight's session. I want to thank you for being here tonight. I know we're all COVID fatigued and Zoom fatigued, but we will never tire of advocating for our children. Thank you, and I hope to see you next Tuesday for How Do We Fix the Glitch and Understanding Funding Equity. Have a
Thanks,
wonderful evening.
Christy. Hey, I have a question, Christy, real quick.
Yes.
What was the bill that was introduced?